Welcome back to Finding Haleness. My name is Heidi, and for those just joining or maybe just stumbled across my video, my channel is all about being healthy and finding ways to overcome illnesses or sicknesses or just health issues that you've had for a long time, or maybe they're brand new. So that's what this channel is about. So this episode is going to be about raw milk and the benefits of it versus pasteurized milk. My last episode was after my allergy elimination treatment for my dairy aversion. And so after that, and in that video, I had mentioned that raw milk didn't bother me or my children, but that pasteurized milk did. So after that video, I had some messages wondering what's the big difference between raw milk and pasteurized milk. So that's what this one's going to be about, a little bit of education on the differences between the two, and then also my experience with them. So I'll start with my experience. Milk has always bothered me, sometimes worse than others, depending on obviously the amount of milk in what I was eating or drinking. And then when I had children, it unfortunately passed along to them. So when I would nurse, my babies would scream and cry, and you could tell they were in pain, and they would have gas, and their stomachs would be really hard, and you could just tell that it was hurting them. And so I already am gluten-free because of my celiac disease. So the next thing I cut out was dairy. And for every single child, they stopped crying as soon as I took dairy out of my diet. So that was an easy fix. I just stopped eating dairy entirely while I nursed so that my baby would not be in pain. And I did try with every child to eat dairy, just in hopes that maybe one of them didn't have an aversion or have a reaction. But unfortunately, they all did. It was not until my fourth baby, unfortunately, it took that long. But when I had him, I had found a new pediatrician also. And I really loved her and I miss her. But she is very modern medicine, but also very holistic, and will try alternatives to the norm for parents who prefer that way. So she is the one who recommended, hey, why don't you try raw milk and see if that hurts him when you nurse him? And I was a little concerned and said, well, all throughout my pregnancy, I was warned, and I mean, it was pounded into my head that do not eat anything unpasteurized. Do not drink unpasteurized orange juice or anything unpasteurized because it's so dangerous. And she quickly shut that down and said, no, not true, not scary. And so she pointed me in the direction of a good farm where they sold raw milk. So that day I went and got a gallon of milk and I tried it. And it takes about 6 hours for things that a mom eats to get to her breast milk. So 6 hours later, I nursed him, I mean, obviously before then too, but I started paying attention, and then 10 hours, and then 12 hours, and the next day, and nothing, no reaction. And I'm like, whoa, maybe it really is the difference in milk. So then I gave my kids each a glass of raw milk and said, try it, because they would always have stomach aches and gas, and one of my kids would actually get a rash. Nothing, no bad reaction, and they loved it. And so that sold me, and we never went back. We've never gone back to pasteurized milk since then. Even organic whole milk is pasteurized, and so it's still not great for you, not good for you. It's better than the other stuff because you're not also ingesting GMOs and hopefully antibiotics and growth hormones and things, but the vitamins that are lost or depleted or destroyed during pasteurization are still going to be a problem with organic milk. Okay, so a huge difference between raw milk and pasteurized milk are simply the conditions in which the cows are raised. So if you go to a farm where you're able to get raw milk, these cows are almost always out in the field grazing on grass and living their natural lives. This one act alone in the way that they're raised gives them higher levels of conjugated linoleic acid, better known as CLAs, and also essential fatty acids, versus the cows in confinement that are fed almost entirely grain, which is a mix of corn and soy and proteins that are not natural for what they would eat in the wild. And not to mention the fact that corn and soy are the highest genetically modified foods on the planet. So the cows in confinement have very, very low levels of these acids. And as we know, fatty acids are very important for our diet. For those unaware, CLAs are omega-6 fatty acids, that are actually used in weight loss supplements, bodybuilding supplements, and for people with diabetes. So contrary to popular belief that skim milk is less fattening than whole milk, completely wrong. In fact, full fat raw milk is the least fattening and the most healthy for you. Skim milk will actually have you be gaining weight more than any other milk. Because of the heating process done in pasteurization, the iron and the copper and the manganese are severely depleted. They're almost completely gone after this process. It also almost entirely destroys vitamin C, and it significantly impairs the bioactivity of vitamin B6. Another essential protein that is all but destroyed during pasteurization, again because of the heat the milk is put under, is called beta-lactoglobin. And that is a protein that you have to have in order to absorb the vitamins, specifically vitamin A, into your body. So this protein is supposed to be in the milk to get to your intestinal tract, where it then allows the vitamin A to be absorbed. Without this protein, the vitamin A, the little bit that's even left in pasteurized milk, cannot be absorbed into your body because it's lacking the protein necessary for that absorption. So I mentioned the corn and the soy being main components of normal dairy cows' diets that are highly genetically modified foods to begin with. But on top of that, these cows are also given BGH, which is the bovine growth hormone, to help them, or to force their bodies to produce an unnatural amount of milk to meet the demand. So in this milk you're drinking from the store, you have this basically chemical concoction of growth hormones and GMOs, and because their diet is so unnatural to their biology, they're constantly getting sick. So these cows are miserable to begin with. So if you want to stop drinking pasteurized milk simply for the welfare of cows, great, because they're miserable. Because of their diets and their confinement, they're always sick, and the illnesses can pass from one cow to the next as well. So they're constantly being pumped full of antibiotics. So you've got growth hormone, antibiotics, GMO, and then once it's pasteurized, those chemicals stay. Those are basically indestructible. So you're still getting all those chemicals and antibiotics, but you're losing all the vitamins that should have been there because those can't survive, or very few can survive the heat treatment. And then again, the ones that do survive, it can't be absorbed because you're missing the proteins you need to absorb them. So in conclusion, we are told that raw milk is not safe because it has to be pasteurized to get rid of the germs. When in reality, raw milk is the safest because it contains the enzymes and the proteins and the probiotics that you need to fight any of that bacteria that may be present. But nowadays, if you find a farm that sells raw milk, they have so many things that they have to pass with the health department that these other farms don't, that it's still safer, even being unpasteurized. So don't let that scare you off. Find a good farm, get raw milk, and see the difference for yourself. Last thing that I'll mention is if you took milk from the store and fed it to a newborn calf, that little baby cow would die. So think about that when you're drinking it or when you're giving it to your children, that the animal it was actually made for, the cow, would die if it drank what we drink. So move on to raw milk if you can. It is more expensive, but it's worth it. I don't know how it's more expensive since it doesn't go through this whole process of pasteurization, which must cost money to do. But nonetheless, trying to be healthy and conscious of what you eat always costs you more, which is really frustrating, but it's worth it. So there's a very short, generalized gist of why raw milk is better, and hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you learned something, and if you have any other questions, feel free to comment and I will answer them as best as I can. Thank you for watching. Till next time.